Hairston? Polisic, no? Hairston, yes. All right, so Hairston's on his way in? Make sure you place him right here on the other side of Jasmin and Kerry, so we can lay it out. We're going to go ahead and get. All right, we're going to go ahead and get started, everyone. First of all, good afternoon. How's everyone doing today? So, first of all, thank you all for being here today as we embark upon our return from summer recess. And one of the first things we need to do as Cleveland City Council is change the name from summer recess. Because quite frankly, it's not like we just get a summer and just go vacationing. This is actually the toughest time of year for our job. We get a chance to really interact and work with the neighborhoods up close and personal. We get to go to these porch meetings. We get to do neighborhood cleanups. We get to do things like my colleague, Councilwoman Santana, did, to host parties, to watch the work in action when we demolish buildings in our communities. So summer is often the time when we actually have to roll up our sleeves and do the work of a council person and really be up close and personal with our community. Today's press conference is something new. This year, Council delivers for Cleveland oftentimes, but we oftentimes do it in a vacuum. So we want to make sure that this year we're announcing our priorities at the start of this session. Our city wants more transparency, they want more accountability, and they're already working closely with Council because Council is the most accessible form of government that exists. We often tell people that our best ability is our availability. That's why oftentimes the people that you see here are the front lines in government. So we hear you, and we're working to provide all of that for you, our board of directors, in our community. The people of this city and the stakeholders that love this city just like we do. We're going to start off this press conference by hearing from Majority Leader Kerry McCormack. Majority Leader McCormack will talk about the accomplishments of past sessions, and then we'll hear from Majority Whip Jasmin Santana to talk about some of the changes that are in store for this upcoming year. I will then close by discussing our priorities for this upcoming session, and then we'll pivot to hear from you and your questions that you have for us from the media. Cleveland City Council has to focus on the macro, the big things and the big ideas in our community. All of us care about the Central Business District, but we also have to focus on the small things, the micro things, and the details of how neighborhoods and communities get served and the quality of life for the people of our community. So we have a very, very challenging job, but each and every one that you see up here are committed to it and are up for the challenge. With that being said, I have the privilege and honor of bringing up the Majority Leader, Kerry McCormack, and then once we bring up Councilman Kerry McCormack, then you'll hear right after that from Jasmin Santana, Councilwoman for Ward 14. Councilman McCormack.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I want to thank to our colleagues who are with us here today. Councilman Harsh, come on up. Come on up. You dressed up real nice today, so you got to get back here. So thank you, Mr. President, and good afternoon to everybody. To say the 2023-2024 session was productive is an understatement. Councilman Hairston, get on up here. This council produced a lot for folks in the city of Cleveland, 385 pieces of legislation. But we collectively know that there is a lot more work to do around our city. Things like safety and quality of life, critically important to our residents. Last session, we focused a lot of times on the federal ARPA dollars passed by the Biden-Harris administration that impacted our city greatly. Here are some examples of what we accomplished for our residents in the last session. Within our Utilities Committee, chaired by Councilman Casey, provided $2 million in utility assistance to help Clevelanders recovering from the pandemic, led by Councilman Casey. Our Health and Human Services Committee, medical debt forgiveness was the leading ordinance which delivered nearly 130,000 people of $1.9 million in debt. I know we heard a lot from our residents when those residents received those letters that medical debt was forgiven. This effort was led by Council Members Slife and Harsh under the leadership of Councilman Conwell and his committee. Within public safety, our crisis intervention team co-responder model was launched, and we invested heavily in things like dash cams and pay raises for our police officers and other members of public safety. We understand how critical every single day those services are to our residents. Trust me, we hear it. Within our development committee, chaired by Councilmember Anthony Hairston, expanding lakefront access to the Cheers Fishing Pier amongst many, many pieces of legislating supporting small business and economic development in our city were passed. I want to give Councilman Hairston a shout out for that as well. I happen to sit on that committee, and very few people vet things like he does, and he's a great leader for that committee. Within our Transportation and Mobility Committee, this council expanded that committee not only to cover the airport, but also to address our road safety. We all hear about road safety every single day in our communities. It's a big priority for our residents, folks speeding and driving recklessly. We were a part of the initial, in the last administration, council actually developed the speed table program. And with partnership with this administration, we also expanded that and launched that successfully. The Euclid Creek Greenway, which will close the transportation gap between Lower Euclid Creek and the riverfront, was also approved through City Council, amongst many other elements, to ensure that our Clevelanders can get around safely. With our Workforce Committee, a ton of work has gone into around the built environment and education, chaired by Councilwoman Jasmin Santana, as well as advocating extensively for our youth to have employment critically during the summer months. In our Municipal Services and Properties Committee, chaired by Councilman Bishop, right behind me, we helped author the over $30 million in our Back to Basics programs. As the title notes, this is for things like rec centers, parks, street resurfacing, traffic safety, and beyond. Again, those basic necessities in our community that our residents rely on. These investments are just some of the work accomplished by Council, and we will continue to invest within the city of Cleveland, providing safety forces with the tools they need to combat crime, continuing to work on quality of life issues, home repair, street repair, capital improvements for our rec centers and roads that desperately need it, citywide traffic calming initiatives to ensure that our families are safe when they push a stroller across the street, when our seniors get on a bus, and when we all drive around the city. And there is so much more to highlight in the weeks to come. We will always work with our residents. As the council president noted, they are our board of directors, our small businesses, staff, constituents, to do the best work we can. The over 370,000 residents in the city of Cleveland rely on us to get that done. I am so proud now to introduce our Majority Whip for Cleveland City Council, a awesome leader here on council in her community, Councilwoman Jasmin Santana.
Buenos dias. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Councilman McCormack, for highlighting some of Council's work from last year. And there's tons more of work that we accomplished last year, but we would be here all day. I'll now talk about the changes that we are making to build upon the work of Clevelanders. Last year, we made radical change to the way we review the budget. Instead of us having 2 weeks of marathon meetings, we implemented the operational review hearings. This gave us a chance to do a deep dive on all departments and divisions and review delivery of service before deliberating on all the important budget items. These hearings allowed us to hear from chiefs, directors about their need of the departments, and allowed us to marry our experiences and conversations in the communities with chiefs and directors' knowledge and experience. We are happy and proud to continue those hearings this year so that we can make better informed decisions about the budget before we vote on it. To improve transparency and make it easier for the public to learn about the ordinance and resolutions we are voting on, we are requiring that legislation now have executive summaries. We have many lengthy ordinances and know the public does not always have time to read every single page. We want them to be able to quickly understand what we are voting on so that we are making this change to better serve them. As always, we welcome the public to watch us here in person at City Hall or via live stream on City Council's YouTube page. Last year, Councilwoman House Jones, pitched and delivered on the idea of taking the budget on the road ahead of budget meetings. We plan to continue the practice this year, while also opening the door for the public to share ideas with us in those sessions via social media and telephone. Lastly, I want to thank our staff who made all this happen, our clerk communications, legal, legislative, and policy research teams arm us with the information and support we need to make informed decisions. We have made a few changes to the structure of those teams, including the promotion of 3 incredible people that we're hiring this year. Someone with years of budget and finance experiences from the administration. I'll announce them before turning it over to Council President Griffin. We now have Daryl Torber serving as our Chief of Strategy, Leah Short as our Chief Legislative Secretary, Joe Titran as our Director of Policy and Research, and Tina Magistro as our new Policy and Research Analyst. I believe these staffing changes will allow us to better serve our communities, and I look forward to working with all of them and all the staff. Council President, I turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Councilwoman Santana. As I close, I will say I'm happy to wrap up and discuss our goals and priorities once again for our Board of Directors, our residents. To be clear, these goals and priorities are built with thorough conversations with our residents and conversations with our stakeholders, like I said, large and small across our city. We have a list of goals and priorities for each of our 7 working committees. We are discussing each of them would have us here for our hours and days. So instead of discussing them now, we will provide you with a paper copy and an electric copy of those on your chairs right behind you. Today, we will talk about 4 major goals and priorities and then pivot to answering your questions about these goals that we have laid forth. The goals and priorities I will discuss today. Number 1, safety. Number 2, ARPA follow-up and oversight. Number 3, housing, infrastructure, ownership, repair. Number 4, redistricting, and somehow I know that that's going to be on everybody's mind moving forward. I'll start out with safety. This was a tough summer for a lot of us, very tough summer. The stats have shown a decrease in major crime across our country. However, we know that nuisance crime has been a problem in our community. Many of us have spent many of nights in hot church basements, on porches, walking neighborhoods. Many of us have even been summoned and called out in the middle of the night at 1, 2, 3, and 4 in the morning to really try to address some of the nuisance activities that we're dealing with in our community. Once again, yes, violent crimes is going down across the nation. We know that from FBI statistics and other statistics. However, these out-of-control block parties, drifting, nuisance complaints, a lack of traffic enforcement, and some of the other things that we've seen cause problems in our neighborhood have been unfathomable this upcoming summer. Many of us in some of the neighborhoods that we represent have never seen this amount of lawlessness and this amount of challenge to authority, even when police do show up to the scene. We've all seen the videos where people have used water guns and other things and just started antagonizing police as well as everyday citizens. These activities are unsafe. These activities can lead into impulsive activity, which can actually harm the perpetrators or the people who they are attacking in these ways. So we're really going to try to work closely with a lot of people to try to deal with these issues in our community. This year, we're going to double down on oversight and working with the administration and our safety forces to ensure that they have the tools that they need to succeed. Safety has to come first. If our residents, businesses, and visitors do not feel safe, then everything else we do will matter little in this community. Whether it's real or perceived, people have to feel safe in the city of Cleveland, and we're going to do everything in this body to improve safety in this community. Last year, we budgeted 1,350 uniformed police personnel. As of September the 6th, we have 1,117 officers on staff. Part of improving safety requires us to have full police staffing. This council wants that to happen. We're glad that the specialized units are doing a great job of solving homicides and dealing with the rapes and some of the other Part 1 crimes that we're dealing with. But once again, we need equal amount of support with traffic enforcement, out-of-control block parties that happen at Airbnbs and other type of things in our community. We have also supported drones. We really want to see the drones get up in the air. We really want to make sure that we utilize that technology that we believe can give us a heads up on dealing with crime and nuisance activity in the community. Corporate chains and drug stores and grocery stores and restaurants and others are leaving because of this out-of-control nuisance crime. We are now part of a task force working with the administration to try to make sure that our residents can have access to good quality prescription drugs. And we've reached out to the major hospitals and others to help us in this effort because, yes, ladies and gentlemen, the amenities are there to support our community, are not just for entertainment, but for everyday livelihood. And these corporate chains are leaving our community daily. However, I do want to acknowledge Huntington Bank, who showed their commitment to our communities, that in the midst of some challenging times, they supported the community and kept their bank in our community. And we need that kind of corporate leadership with every other entity, whether it be a retail store, drugstore, grocery store in our community. Many developers and investors are challenged now and are questioning whether they should continue to invest in this city. That's why dealing with safety is preeminent. And even these corporate partners, when I've met and talked with them, some of the people like K&D and others across our city are serious about doing whatever they can do to help harden our city to make sure that we address violent crime and these types of things in our community. Wherever we go in our community, housing stability is a key component of what people need. People need help renovating houses. They need help repairing houses. They need help making some of these homes age-friendly. And I am very excited about some of the national conversation that is taking place, especially from our president and vice president, to double down on affordable housing and trying to make sure that we have true affordable housing in our community. Not affordable housing by definition only, but affordable housing that poor people and people that live on the margins of our society and who are homeless or who are unsheltered are able to have good quality housing in our community. In a place like Cleveland, we should never, never have that as a problem, and this council is committed to investing resources into that. This council champion aging in place and funding down payment assistance because we know that the true path to wealth in our communities is home ownership. We're going to work close with the banks, and I've actually reached out to Councilman Chris Harsh and Anthony Harrison, and I know Councilman Joe Jones has had a very high priority to make sure that we re-examine our Community Reinvestment Act agreements with the banks to ensure that lending is happening in the city of Cleveland for small businesses and homeowners, for families like we see day to day that want to live and raise a family in the city of Cleveland. We truly believe that that will go a long way in addressing some of the volatility that some of our neighborhoods see. I will tell you that innovative financing and ARPA review is going to be critical. One of the things that council did is we passed a TIF district. And in this tax incremental finance district, it was a very complex financial deal in order to try to divert resources that we could make sure that we grow our downtown footprint, but also that the proceeds from this will actually also go towards neighborhood investments. And I want to commend the Rocket Mortgage family and the family of companies and Dan Gilbert and his team and Kofi Bonner that really made it a priority that the minute that we put bonds out, that they are going to make a private investment to help with our community and our neighborhood. And this body will have an opportunity to show where those resources will go. There was a lot of extra spending in the past. We spent much of our ARPA dollars not on personnel, but on fixed assets, because we did not want to use one-time money that would eventually go away and put ourselves in a bind where we would hire a bunch of people just to see them get laid off if we used too much of that money for personnel. So we focused on equipment. We focused on police cars, EMS ambulances. We focused on fixed assets to try to help with the sites fund to make sure that we can get property ready across our city. You heard about the Back to Basics program, where we wanted to make sure that we take care of some of the crumbling infrastructure needs that we had. But we have to continue to look at creative financing and innovative financing because, ladies and gentlemen, the general fund is stressed and ARPA money is gone. So now we have to make sure when we look at some of these big projects, we might have to have creative financing like we use with the TIF district and the overlay district and other things in order to make sure that we don't harm our general fund, which goes towards helping our board of directors have a high quality of life. We led and approved ARPA spending that we believe will support residents. We need to get these contracts signed and we need to get these services delivered. It is inexcusable whenever we have vendors that have been waiting to do this work. We need that money out on the street, and we're going to work closely with the administration to get that money out on the street. We will be using our oversight authority to lean on the administration and anybody that have received investments from ARPA to see where they are and how this is helping the people of this city. On a related note, we will review and strengthen oversight of CRA agreements, like I mentioned earlier, with regional banks. We've already started that process, and we must and will partner with them to improve the economy for Clevelanders. We must do everything in our power to make this city we all love more attractive for underrepresented communities, homeowners, and small businesses. We are dedicated to that, but ladies and gentlemen, government cannot do it alone. We need to leverage our support with the private sector to make this happen. I can't state that enough. We cannot do this alone. We need to use our dollars to be a catalytic investment so that private investment can come and double down to make our city great. Redistricting. We have to cut 2 seats because of population decline. We have hired the consultant team of Bob Dykes of Triad Research Group, community leader and well-known architect Kent Whitley from the Whitley & Whitley Construction Group. We also have Dr. Mark Salling, a senior research fellow at Cleveland State University, specializing in data information science. And our consultants are continuing to review data, and we must anticipate having a map soon to share for public feedback and input. We plan to have 4 meetings across the community, across the city of Cleveland, to discuss and collect feedback on the map before we make a final vote for council. My goal is to have this new map approved by the council before the end of the year. We will definitely have that by the time petitions are ready for anybody that would run. Residents have shared their thoughts with us about redrawn lines, and working with the consultant, we hope to keep neighborhoods intact, more condensed, more equitable in having access to schools, libraries, recreation centers, and other resources, and to use natural boundaries like rivers, railroads, and lakes in order to try to make sure that we create wards and try to do this in a way that is very transparent and very focused on giving us the neighborhoods that everybody deserves. We encourage the public to use Dave's Redistricting app, a website used for redistricting purposes across the country to create their own maps, just so that you can see what we're dealing with. We have to make sure that it's proportional across the board. Now, some of us may have larger geographical territories, but the people that stay in those neighborhoods are what we're focused on to try to get around 25 to 26,000 people per ward, which means some wards may have to give up some, and some wards may have to gain some. Ladies and gentlemen, those are the 4 priorities and goals that will keep us occupied. But once again, Each of our committees has their own goals, and you have a copy of those goals behind you. The handout will give you more details. I know that each committee chair have put forth some of the goals that they're looking at. And leading this work of council and being equal amongst all of the peers here is truly gratifying and truly grateful work. I look forward to continuing to work and delivering for our board of directors, the city of Cleveland residents and stakeholders. And I want to say this, ladies and gentlemen, before I open up the floor for questions. Council is a tough job. A lot of times people do not appreciate what the men and women that you see before you sacrifice and do every day. I want to thank each one of them for the time that they've sacrificed to do this job from their families, the time that they sacrifice doing this job for the love of this community, and the fact that everything that happens in this city, council is a co-equal branch of government. Therefore, we are equally responsible for making sure that this city is a success, and we're looking forward in this next session. With that being said, I'll open up the floor to any questions. Yes, sir. Thank you.
Thank you for the in-depth summaries of what the city is going to do for the citizens. So how do you take what you said today, what you all represent from this table to the streets of Cleveland, so it's made real to the people of the city?
Mr. Boomer, that's a great question. One of the things that I think everybody up here takes pride in is connecting the boardroom and the streets, making sure that the people in the neighborhood, which is why we spent so much time in the neighborhood, really understanding and having a unique understanding of the neighborhoods. I know my councilman, my good friend Councilman Conwell always said a sensitive ear is what we actually provide to these residents, so that we could make sure that we articulate that to the board in these boardrooms and around these communities every day. It's our job to articulate the needs of the community. But it also goes both ways. Whenever we're dealing a big deal like a TIF district, I and all these people that you see in front of you today spend an enormous amount of time educating our community on how these tools work and why we're doing those, so that misinformation and disinformation, which seems to carry the day in politics, does not happen. So we're going to work very hard in order to articulate how this money that I just talked about is improving the day-to-day quality of life for people and stakeholders in the city of Cleveland.
If there's a lack of another question from anybody, I broached this idea with Mayor Bibb, I don't know, a couple of years ago now. Used to, folks, when they see you, would say, "Have a good day." Now they say, "Stay safe." Let's talk about safety in this city, please, a little bit more.
So once again, and I'll reiterate that, and I know that we have our chair of public safety, Mike Polinsic, who's been doing a yeoman's job. He watches those numbers religiously to make sure that this council knows where we're at. We're going to be very vocal about trying to get to that 1350. One of the things that people have to realize is that we've given this administration every tool that they have asked for, that they said that they've needed in order to make this community safe. So we take it very serious when the public comes back to us and say we don't feel safe. And that's the reason why we're going to be pushing a lot harder on trying to understand how safety is a priority in this city. I will tell you that we're going to work closely with the Peacemakers Alliance and some of the street outreach workers and the Community Relations Board, because some things may not need a uniform response, but in that park, in that school, outside of that area, may need some people engaging them. So the 10 Points Coalition, people that are doing that kind of work, we want to continue to work with them. But at the end of the day, we need more traffic enforcement. We need to deal with some of these nuisance crimes. If I would tell you that there were times when people called and hundreds of people shut down the street, unacceptable. When I can tell you that there's been nuisance crime and people say they don't want to bother calling, which is one of the reasons why we've invested in tools like ShotSpotter and other things, because some areas have become numb to making calls. We hear that when we're out there in the neighborhood day to day. Many of us don't get the luxury of going to the grocery store and just grabbing a loaf of bread. We get a whole bunch of earful of what's wrong and what needs to happen in our community big and small, every day. So if anybody are experts in understanding what are the intricacies of safety and are needed in our community, this council understands that, and we're going to spend an enormous amount of time articulating that. I know my colleague, Councilman Joe Jones, the assistant chair of safety, is also very passionate about that. So we're going to work close with our partners because we cannot have a community either feeling real or perceived that they are unsafe.
That's right.
Ketor.
Hey, good afternoon. Kaitor K, 3 News. Good afternoon. Starting the new session today, how do you reflect on all of the protests and the demonstrations and the drama from last year, some of the new rules that were made over public comments, reflections, and then how that impacts going forward into this session?
Well, like I mentioned before, none of us signed up to be Henry Kissinger. So, you know, with the nuances of what has happened and watching how so many people have come under fire for not understanding the nuances of that conflict, we know that it was going to be a challenge for anything that we have said. We did eventually, because we did listen and hear residents. We did listen and hear not just protesters, but residents that reached out to us and said, hey, we're starting to feel really overwhelmed by the amount of deaths that are happening. But at the same time, they felt that the Israeli community had the right to defend themselves and had the right to respond. We'll never get that right with the subtleties of that conversation, but we do think that we got it right by supporting the UN resolution, which basically acknowledged all of the things that most of the people wanted us to address. I think it was unfortunate that that diverted a lot of attention. That's the reason why we changed a lot of rules in order to make sure that our rules were more flexible, more democratic, but that we also made sure that we will be able to conduct the people's business, which is what we did. Many of us have gotten stressed over that whole process because, quite frankly, there's friends that many of us have on both sides of the conflict. And many of those friends are upset, and we understand that. But at the end of the day, I always focus on the people of this city. I always focus on the body, and we focus on the staff. And we did what we felt was best for our community, even though it brought some raw emotions out at times. Once again, council is the most accessible form of government. Therefore, most people bring their grievances to us, even though we were probably less, we had the less amount of ability to impact the situation. But we did feel the need to act, and we felt that we acted appropriately.
Blaine, on redistricting, and I didn't expect to ask this in front of all your colleagues, but do you know yet which council members will have to run against each other? Or do we expect any retirements or resignations that would make that not happen?
Both to be determined.
Okay.
We don't know yet because, once again, these are ongoing conversations. These are tough conversations. And I want to say this, and I want to say this in advance. Every single person up here has to look themselves in the mirror after every term. And they have to, in my opinion, this is what I do. This is the assessment that I go through. Am I still effective? Am I still accomplishing what I set here to accomplish? I also want to make sure that I understand, is this the best place where I need to serve? And then last but not least, I ask the question, what are the people saying? What are the people of the community saying? And those three things that I think everybody up here are going to ask themselves and determine, and these are ongoing conversations that we'll be having as we go through this process.
May I direct a question to Councilman Polensek? So if you
Councilman
could-
Polensek,
Yes, sir.
he can handle himself. Come on. Come on, you got to talk to the mic. Something tells me he's not shy to get in front of a mic and say something.
That's exactly
Harry.
right. Yes, sir. Thank you very much. You are Safety Director, right? Safety
Chairman
Committee?
Public Safety Committee.
Okay. All right, very good. Thanks for the correction. I'll make sure I get it right
I think
on the
he'll
air.
like that job.
Right, I would.
Thank you. I know I've seen you and talk with you about safety in the city. I know you're very passionate about it.
Yes.
Talk to us about how to help people understand that police and this council can't do it all, and that each of us has a responsibility. I say us because I live in the city. Has a responsibility to also help deter and stop crime.
Harry, let me remind the viewing public here is that council cannot hire, we cannot fire, we cannot deploy, we cannot administer. That's the charter. We're prohibited by law. So as the council president indicated, after discussions within the body, we provided the administration everything they needed to have, and then some. So our concerns are not only from the standpoint of deployment and addressing the issues internally, but calling upon our citizens. You know that old saying, if you see something, say something. What just appalled me recently was the death of a 7-year-old child that was run over, hit and run. And what I stood there at the scene, and people know who did it. People knew who did it and didn't want to say anything. Didn't want to cooperate with the police. There was silence. So the question is, have we become that cold and callous in this city today that we ignore the death of a 7-year-old child? I would like to think not. So at the end of the day, we all have responsibilities here to stand up, take our streets back, to stand up. If you think the 17 members of council can do it by themselves, you're badly mistaken. We cannot do it, nor can the Cleveland Division of Police do it. We're at a thin blue line. We're at the lowest we've been in 110 years in the Division of Police. So we're trying to do our best, but it's up to the citizens to set the tone, take care of your children and your grandchildren, be involved, and care about each other. And care about each other. That's how you have a safe community. You know, we all have to decide what kind of community you want to live in. You want to live in a safe, decent, well-protected neighborhood? Or do you want to live in something where you need bars on your windows, on your doors? I don't choose to live like that. So I can tell you my colleagues have done everything they can, in my opinion. And, you know, I talk to this guy next to me every other day, maybe twice in a day, about issues of public safety. So we've done everything we can. We're still waiting for an aggressive marketing and recruitment plan to take place here. So that's where I'm at. I hope I answered your question.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
President Griffin, can I ask you a question? I don't know if I heard you correctly. Did you say something, use the adjective stress general fund or strengthen?
But once again, the general fund, now ARPA dollars are gone. A lot of the carryover dollars are gone. So now the general fund is we're going to have to do some tough belt tightening over the next year or two. And one of the things that I'm really looking forward to having a discussion with the administration and this body is how do we budget forward? How do we make sure that we look and try to project the next 2 to 3 to 4 years? Because right now, once that one-time money leaves and once these holes that we filled are once again open, we're going to have to make some tough decisions in this city regarding the budgeting. So we want to start thinking about that now so that we can prepare.
Some of those ARPA funds, they've been promised but aren't necessarily dispersed. Is there a possibility, because it's all been sort of leaned through the general fund, or there aren't federal deadlines on it, that some of those promises might be curtailed or and some of that money used?
No, I don't think that's the case. I think that at the end of the day, we just need to get the stuff out the door. I was once told a long time ago that, you know, politicians don't ask how, they say when. And we're at a win stage. How do we see when this money hits the streets and it helps our folks? For example, we passed home rehabilitation money probably about 18 months ago or something like that. Well, they were just now being able to get the providers and put that out there in the street. You know, people have a sense of urgency in this city. And one of the things that we don't get an opportunity to do, council doesn't get an opportunity to make any excuses, because when we're out there walking in that neighborhood, people want to say why, when, and how. They don't care about how. They want to know when. And how can you get this done, like, immediately? And whenever I have contractors saying that, you know, well, we haven't signed a contract yet, sometimes it may be at the agency level, sometimes it may be at the department level, but those are things that we're going to spend an enormous amount of time trying to make sure that we understand and provide the oversight, because people want to see the dollars that we're allocating hit the street. You got one more question, and we got Courtney?
I think I'd be remiss if we didn't touch on that stadium out there behind you. There's been a lot of talk this summer about that. We've heard what the mayor said about his potential proposal. As we look in the session, maybe for a potential deal, are there any red lines for you on what a deal could be? You're talking about the stress general fund.
Well, Courtney, I'm glad you asked that question, and I got great news for you. The East 88th Street Browns are going to stay in Cleveland. See, I missed that, didn't you? The East 88th Street Browns is the best municipal football league that plays over in the Huff here. So that's what we know right now. We know that they're going to be playing in the municipal football league this year. We have not had a seat at the table with the negotiations. I will tell you that everything that we do, we want to make sure that we see how people of this city are going to benefit and how the people of this city are going to get a return on their investment. We also want to make sure that we understand how, how it can hurt us if we give up too much, or what tools we give up. Some of the council members had a lot of questions about parking revenue and how that factors into the deal once we do it. Those are discussions that are ongoing, but I will tell you right now, we haven't been presented with a proposal. I've shared some of my comments publicly and openly about making sure that we keep it in the central business district, that we can make sure that that the investments that we made throughout downtown don't get hurt, because we believe that it will take 10, 15, maybe even more years to reset the downtown central business district if we lose a major component. People say, well, it's just 8 games or 12 activities a year. Well, I always compare it with Little Italy, which I have the privilege of serving. And when the Feast of Assumption comes into town, even though it's only a 4-day event, it makes up a significant portion of the businesses in that area of their income. So anytime that we have a major corporate entity like that, we want to make sure that we look at any adverse impacts, and we want to look at whatever deal comes to us. It's not abnormal to use admissions tax and other things like that in order to try to pull down the revenue in order to pay for the stadium. So those are things that we're analyzed, but we haven't gotten a deal yet. Once again, I know I said it jokingly, but the only Browns that I know right now that I can tell you for sure that I'm not worried about are the Municipal League East 88th Street Browns. Other than that, you have to ask Mr. Haslam and Mrs. Haslam and the administration, because we haven't had the ability to negotiate yet until we are presented with a deal. All right. First of all, thanks, everybody. We look forward to a robust year. We'll make ourselves available anytime. We really appreciate the media. We really try to make sure that we make ourselves available to you. So please work with Joan Mazzolini and Daryl Torbert if you have any follow-up or need any clarification. Thank you all so much. Looking forward to this upcoming session.